Why didn't anyone tell me? That the pain I carry wasn't a flaw, that my breakdowns weren't signs of weakness, but messages from my unconscious, that what I called overreacting was actually my inner child crying out to be seen, that the tension in my body was memory, that my silence was survival, that what I feared most wasn't change, it was being vulnerable enough to feel. Dr. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind, he studied the soul. And perhaps one of his most profound insights is this: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that settle for a moment. All those patterns you can't break, the people you attract again and again, the moments where you sabotage your own happiness, they're not coincidences. They're echoes of a wound you never meant to carry. You didn't choose it, but it shaped you. And Jung believed that the wound is the place where the light enters, but only if you have the courage to look at it. So today, I'm inviting you to take a breath and look, not to blame, not to relive, but to remember, because remembering is the first step to reclaiming. Maybe no one ever taught you how to heal. Maybe they told you to get over it, stay strong, or stop thinking so much. But healing doesn't begin with advice, it begins with honesty. And honesty begins with silence. That sacred moment when you finally stop running. And ask yourself, what am I really carrying? You see, trauma isn't just what happened, it's what happened. In the absence of someone to help you process it, that's what Jung understood. He saw trauma not as a single event, but as a fragmentation, a split within the psyche. A child left behind in the shadows of the unconscious, still waiting to be held, still waiting to be heard. But here's the good news. Healing is not about fixing yourself. It's about becoming whole. And Jung's approach to healing wasn't through suppression, it was through integration, by learning to speak with the wounded parts, by embracing active imagination, by letting the symbols of the unconscious speak through dreams, art, memory, and even pain. In fact, many people don't realize this, but Jung believed your symptoms are symbols, that your anxiety, your numbing, your people-pleasing, they're not dysfunctions. They're messages. Messages from the self, from the soul saying, please don't abandon me again. And this is why most people never truly heal, not because they're weak, but because they never learned how to listen. They were never taught that their pain had meaning, that their body held wisdom, that their shadow wasn't their enemy. It was their teacher. So if you've ever felt like you're too broken to be whole again, hear this now. There is nothing wrong with you. There is only something unseen. And what is unseen can still be brought into the light. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And becoming who you truly are starts when you stop pretending you're fine, when you stop hiding the wound, and instead ask, what is it trying to show me? So let's begin this journey together, not with judgment, not with shame, but with sacred curiosity. And if you're with me, drop this in the comments now. I am healing. Because this isn't just a video, it's a mirror, a portal, a permission slip to begin again. And if you feel called to go even deeper into Jung's wisdom, there's a powerful ebook we created, based on his teachings, that's helping thousands reconnect with their true self. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. It's there if your soul is ready. Now, let's go further. Let's meet the wound. Let's understand what Jung called the forgotten language of the soul and uncover the hidden secret to healing trauma. Not slowly, not someday, but starting now. They say time heals all wounds, but Jung would disagree, because time doesn't heal what you keep buried, and silence doesn't soothe what was never spoken. Many people believe trauma has to be dramatic, a violent event, a public tragedy, a devastating loss. But Jung taught us something far more haunting. The most dangerous trauma is the one you never knew you had, the one that didn't explode. It seeped in quietly. In the moments you were ignored, in the times you were told, you're too sensitive, in the countless little ways you were made to feel unworthy of love unless you earned it. This is the hidden wound, the silent imprint, the trauma of not being seen. When a child's need for emotional safety is unmet, something inside them fractures, not because the pain is too loud, but because it's invisible. And what is invisible becomes unconscious. That's where The wound hides, in the unconscious, in the place Jung spent his life studying. Because the unconscious doesn't forget. It stores what you couldn't handle. It holds the parts of you that had to shut down just to survive. And here's the paradox. You grow up, but the child remains. And if that inner child never felt safe, they will still run your life, just quietly, through anxiety, through perfectionism, through avoidance, self-doubt, and emotional numbness. You'll find yourself stuck in cycles that make no sense. You'll ask, why do I always push people away when I crave love the most? Why do I feel the need to prove myself constantly? Why do I panic when things go too well? Because the body remembers what the mind rejected. Because the unconscious is not passive, it is alive. Jung described this as the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown, repress, or deny. But here's what most people don't realize. The shadow isn't just anger, jealousy, or fear. It can also be your grief, your longing, your need for tenderness. It's the softness you learn to hide because someone made you believe it was weakness. And that's the core of this hidden trauma. You were not allowed to be fully human. Instead, you were taught to perform, to adapt, to please, to be strong, to not need, to not cry, to not disturb. But wholeness is not found in control. It's found in integration. And that's what Jung meant when he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So the question is no longer, what's wrong with me? But rather, what part of me had to be silenced to survive? Maybe you've never asked yourself that, or maybe you have, but the answer scared you. Here's what I want you to hear. You don't need to be afraid of your pain. Your pain already knows you. It's been whispering to you through every breakdown, every overreaction, every quiet moment when the sadness crept in for no reason. That was never weakness. It was a signal. And if you're still here, still listening, it means something in you is ready to see, ready to name what's been unspoken, ready to walk into the unconscious, not as a victim, but as a seeker. Because healing this kind of trauma isn't about fixing anything. It's about remembering everything. It's about bringing the forgotten child home and showing them they no longer have to hide. And here's where I ask you to pause and tell me in the comments, yes, right now, what's the one part of yourself you've been afraid to face? No pressure to explain, no need to justify, just a word, just a sentence, just something real, because the act of naming is powerful. Jung believed that the unconscious becomes conscious through symbol, language, and connection. And when you speak the unspoken, you begin to take your power back. You might feel resistance. That's normal. The ego will try to protect you from what feels too raw. But you are not the ego. You are the one watching it. You are the one who chooses whether to keep looping or to finally listen. This is not about reliving the past. It's about reclaiming the part of you that was left behind. So take a deep breath. You've already done the hardest part. You stayed. You didn't scroll away. You chose to hear the truth, and now the deeper healing begins. The wound beneath the wound. Why you keep repeating what hurts you. There's a wound that doesn't scream, it doesn't bleed, and it rarely shows up in ways people around you can name. But it shows up in the way you love, in the way you leave, in the way you sabotage the very things you say you want. Carl Jung called it the personal unconscious, a reservoir of forgotten memories, emotional injuries, and psychological patterns we've inherited or buried so deep, we mistake them for personality. But here's the brutal truth. You don't repeat the trauma because you're broken. You repeat it because a part of you is still waiting for it to end differently. Let that sink in. Most people never heal because they never realize they're unconsciously recreating the scene of the original wound, hoping this time someone will stay. Someone will choose them. Someone will finally see the child behind the mask, and when that doesn't happen, they spiral. They blame themselves, or worse, they double down on the pain. Let's take a moment here. Think of that one relationship, one pattern, one emotional loop that seems to define your life story. Now ask yourself, am I reliving something old, hoping it'll finally resolve? This is what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The invisible blueprint. If you were emotionally neglected, even in subtle ways, you likely carry a blueprint of emotional starvation. You love too much. So not at all. You give endlessly, hoping someone will finally give back, or you push everyone away before they get the chance. This isn't random. This is programming, and unless interrupted, your nervous system will continue to scan the world for familiar pain. Because to the unconscious, familiar equals safe, even if it hurts, even if it destroys you. Let me give you an example. A woman keeps falling in love with emotionally unavailable men. Each time she tells herself, this one is different, but every relationship ends the same way. In abandonment, she's not unlucky. She's loyal to a wound. On a subconscious level, she's seeking a version of her father, hoping this time he'll stay. And unless she becomes aware of that inner child's need for rescue, she'll keep bleeding for it, again and again. This is how trauma cycles get passed down, not just through genes or stories, but through unresolved emotional needs. But here's the hope. Once you identify the wound, you can stop obeying it. The pain that shapes us. Not all wounds come from violence. Some come from silence, from the unmet gaze of a parent too lost in their own pain to see you, from a mother who was physically present but emotionally absent, from a teacher who humiliated you for being sensitive. These aren't dramatic enough for movies, but they're devastating for the psyche, because emotional neglect doesn't tell you something is wrong. It tells you you are wrong. That's the wound. And healing it starts with one terrifying truth. The people who hurt you were also wounded, but that doesn't make your pain any less valid. Once you can hold that paradox, that they were broken, and so were you reclaim your power. You stop waiting for an apology. You stop begging the past to be different. You start parenting the parts of you that were never held. This is where healing begins, not in forgetting what happened, but in finally responding to it, with compassion, with boundaries, and with truth. Now pause with me again, breathe. If any part of what I just said resonates with you, if you've felt that emotional emptiness, if you've repeated pain, hoping for a different outcome, tell me in the comments, what are you ready to stop tolerating from your past? Your words might inspire someone else to find their turning point. There is a moment in everyone's healing where something strange happens. You stop wanting to fix the pain, and instead you begin to ask, who am I without it? Carl Jung believed that the greatest task of the human being is individuation, not perfection, not achievement, but becoming who you truly are beneath the layers of survival, shame, and social conditioning. Because if we're honest, most of us have never really met ourselves. We've met our trauma. We've met our defenses. We've met the version of us that smiles when we're falling apart, the version that hustles for worth, that loves out of fear of abandonment, that stays silent so we don't lose connection. But not the real us, the real you, the one that existed before the first wound, has always been waiting, not for someone else to find it, but for you to remember it. And that's what makes healing terrifying. It's not just about feeling better, it's about becoming unfamiliar to the people who only knew the version of you built by pain. You'll start saying no more often. You'll lose tolerance for chaos, for breadcrumbs, for conditional love. You'll find yourself crying, not out of sadness, but because you finally feel safe enough to feel. And that's when the transformation begins. You stop chasing people who don't value you. Not out of spite, but because your nervous system finally understands that love doesn't have to feel like survival. You begin to parent your inner child the way they needed back then, with warmth, with patience, with unshakable presence. This is the sacred work, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet, revolutionary decision to no longer abandon yourself. Most people think healing is about cutting people off or meditating more, but true healing is subtle. It's when you wake up and no longer feel like a stranger to your own body. It's when you feel triggered, but instead of collapsing, you breathe and respond with grace. It's when someone crosses your boundary and for the first time, you don't apologize for holding it. You start listening to the whispers within, the ones that say this isn't for me, the ones that beg you to rest, the ones that say enough. And maybe that's what healing really is, remembering you were always enough. Because the wound was never about being unlovable, it was about being unseen. And now that you see yourself, truly, fully, you no longer accept scraps, you no longer shrink, you no longer perform for love that must be earned. You just are. And that's the most powerful thing you can ever be. So here's what I'll leave you with before we close. You are not broken. You are buried. Your light was never extinguished, only dimmed. And every act of self-compassion is a match struck. In the dark, a spark that says, I remember. I remember who I was before the world told me who to be. And from here, it's not about going back. It's about becoming wholly, unapologetically, you. So now, you stand at the edge of something sacred, not a finish line, not a destination, but the beginning of a homecoming, back to yourself. You've peeled back layers of silence, pain, and pretense. You've stared at the parts of you that once hid in shame, and slowly, tenderly, you've begun to gather those fragments and whisper, you can come home now, because real healing isn't loud, it isn't glamorous, it won't trend on social media. It happens in the quietest moments. When you finally sit with your sadness without trying to fix it. When you stop chasing what's breaking you. When you learn to love yourself without needing anyone else to validate that love. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now, you're beginning to understand what that means. It's not about proving anything. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real, raw, present, alive. You'll still have days where the shadows creep in. Old wounds will knock on your door from time to time, asking if you still remember how it felt to bleed. But now you do something different. You don't run. You don't numb. You open the door with gentleness and say, yes, I remember. But I no longer live there. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without drowning. It means feeling without breaking. It means carrying your story, not as a weight, but as a witness to your resilience. Some people won't understand this version of you, the one who no longer performs, who no longer begs, who no longer tolerates half-love. Let them go, because you're not here to be liked. You're here to be free, free to cry when you need to, free to rest without guilt, free to walk away from chaos, even when your heart trembles, free to trust yourself, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally feel safe within your own skin. And let this be your quiet revolution. You don't have to earn peace. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to apologize for outgrowing what once felt like home. From this moment forward, every breath you take in awareness, every boundary you hold with love, every time you choose softness over self-betrayal, you are healing, not just for yourself, but for the generations before you who didn't know how. For the child you once were who never gave up, and for the future you, who will one day look back and whisper, thank you for choosing to begin. So if this message spoke to you, if something deep inside you said, this is me, then this is your invitation to take the next step on your path. I've created a powerful resource filled with practices, insights, and healing truths, inspired by Carl Jung's deepest teachings. It's not just information. It's transformation, designed to help you reconnect with the version of you that was never broken, only buried. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Explore it when you're ready. Your healing doesn't have to be rushed, but it does deserve to begin. And if you want more content like this, more truth, more depth, more moments that feel like they were written just for you, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell so you never miss what your soul might be waiting to hear next, because this space isn't just a channel. It's a sanctuary, a place where people like you, seekers, feelers, survivors, come to remember who they are, to feel less alone, to breathe again. So leave a comment below if this touched something real in you. If you've ever felt invisible, broken or misunderstood, your story matters here, and your voice deserves to be heard. Let this be the day you stopped surviving your life and started living it on your terms. You are not too late, not too far gone, not too much, not too little. You're exactly where you need to be, at the start of your own return, and I'll be here every step of the way.